Thought Bubble Audio.
Look, up in the sky.
You will never find the more wretched hive of scum and villainy.
Welcome to Beer with Geeks with Tim and Frank.
Who are you?
I'm Batman.
I am Iron Man.
Your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man.
Hi, Christopher. I'm Nero.
My name is Inigo Montoya.
You're a wizard, Harry.
A couple of guys with a couple of beers and a whole lot of pop culture nostalgia.
Make it so, number one.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Beatles.
Named the dog Indiana.
Life finds a way.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Now sit back and crack open a cold one, because it's time for Beer with Geeks.
It comes in paints.
Shaken, not stirred.
Great Scott!
I was way off. I knew it started with an S, though.
Hi, and welcome to Beer with Geeks, where two geeks geek out with beer. I'm Tim, and with me, as always, it's The Law? No, that's not the right franchise. It's Frank. How are you today?
Hello.
Hello, how are you?
I am doing well. Crime in progress. I am doing well. How are you?
Good, you are a crime in progress.
I am a crime in progress.
That is such like something you'd like see on a shirt that someone would wear ironically.
Yeah,
like,
totally.
I'm a crime in progress. Oh man, that's fantastic. I'm doing well, Frank. Thank you for asking. Did I already ask you how you are?
You did, but I haven't yet asked you what you are drinking. And is that a crime in progress?
It is not a crime in progress, but I'd be happy to tell you what I am drinking. I'm drinking a glass of wine tonight, Frank. And the only reason for that being is that it was in the fridge, and it must be drunk. Otherwise, it will go bad because the bottle is already open.
Well,
so tonight is a wine night. Which I feel
not
like
quite a crime in progress, but
crime
you better watch
wine.
yourself,
They almost rhyme, because it's the I sound in the middle, which is a particular type of rhyme. So technically, it is a rhyme. Anyway, I'm drinking a Kim Crawford, which is Sauvignon Blanc from the astounding year of 2022.
Yes,
yes,
I remember it well.
I don't, hilariously.
That's funny.
Anything interesting happened in 2022?
I had a kid.
Wait, you never in 2021? I don't know. What year? What year is it? I'm just kidding. I know. Because she's one, Frank.
Because she's
so
one.
That's how I know that. Yeah.
Yes. That's a good way to know it.
It is helpful. Frank, what are you drinking tonight?
I am just about to open a beer, a Castle Island White Ale. It's their Belgian style wheat beer from the Castle Island brewery out of Boston. And actually,
the beer out of Boston.
Referencing knowledge. Nice. I actually imported this beer myself. I kind of smuggled this beer, Tim. You may know that I was in Boston last week for a conference.
I did know that.
Yes, and one of the nights that I was there, I stayed in a hotel in Boston. Near the hotel,
I know you meant nights like the night, but I immediately had like a dude in armor flash in my head, and you were one of the knights I was working with. Yeah,
one of the Jedi Knights that was there.
Oh man,
or one of the medieval. It was Galahad. Let's just Sir Galahad did so one of the nights that I was there, I got room service and they had you could get beer by the can sent up to your room. So I was like, I'll probably have 2 beers tonight. So I had 2 sent up, but I only wanted 1. And I was like, well, I'm leaving tomorrow, so I can't leave this in my room. I guess I'm just gonna stick it in my suitcase and just see if I can bring it home.
Mm-hmm.
So I technically smuggled this beer out of Massachusetts into New Hampshire.
But you did it. You enjoy it?
I did. And now I'm enjoying it. So there you go. Castle Island White Ale.
Well, good.
That's the story that goes with this beer.
You. Good for you. I'm glad you're enjoying it. I'm so glad for you.
No, what else I enjoyed?
No, Frank, what did you enjoy?
Robocop.
I also enjoyed Robocop, Frank, because we're here for a long-awaited next episode of Superhero Slapback. Cue the music that I can't remember we had. Oh, yeah, that's right.
We keep forgetting to do it. Slapback, baby, slapback.
Slapback. He doesn't take anything seriously. No, He's not a Joker.
No.
So Peter Verhoeven's RoboCop, 1987. I used to watch this on TV when I was a kid. Can't believe that I used to watch this on TV when I was a kid. That was my main takeaway from watching the RoboCop for the first time in 25 years, probably.
Jeez.
Yeah.
I would imagine it was edited for TV, right? Or was it like on
yeah,
HBO?
I'm sure it was,
Okay.
Yeah, it was not in 185 franc. It was definitely in a square.
Well, there's that. Yeah. But like, yes. It may have been modified from its original format. Yes.
It sure was. But show probably all the swears and the blood and
the blood is more
stuff.
what I'm the swears for sure, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but it was still, I remember watching it. So for those of you who don't know, hold on, let me go back because this movie is 1987. So RoboCop is the story of a man named Alex Murphy, played by Peter Weller, the great Peter Weller, who for superhero anythings was the voice of Batman in The Dark Knight Returns. And he was unnamed admiral, can't remember, in Star Trek Into Darkness.
That's right. Yes.
I can't remember who that was supposed to be, but the Section 31 guy.
Yeah.
Spoilers for Star Trek Into Darkness. So Peter Weller was great, great actor, and it's about this cop. He recently goes to Detroit. It's this dystopian future, and mega corporations rule everywhere, and blah blah blah. This is what we feared in the 80s, and 30 years later, guess what we're living in? Basically that.
Pretty similar.
Pretty similar. I mean, the crime maybe not so much, or even the technology, I would say, is not even close. In terms of that, it's so much further and so much further behind. That's why I love sci-fi from years past, because the advances that we think are going to occur never get even close to that. But the stuff that is still analog is way past that. It's so interesting. But anyway, this new transfer cop, pretty idealist, whatever, ends up getting gunned down by the dad from that 70s show.
Yes.
Who is kind of the biggest crime boss and whatever. He and his crew gun him down, and he is taken by this big company, and the Omni Consumer Company, Omni Sumercan Products, and he is made into RoboCop, which is their new initiative for building a new, better Detroit, in which all the police are automated and all this stuff, and it works well because the police are ready to go on strike because they're not treated correctly. But then that one sergeant is like, "We're police, we don't strike. We're public servants. I don't care how crap your living conditions are."
Suck it up, Buttercup.
Yeah, basically. So this movie is a satire, right? For sure.
Clearly.
It's satirizing action movies and sci-fi and the 80s and all this different stuff.
Reagan
politics, yeah, gentrification. We're just going to take away the entire city of Detroit and build a new one.
Right. The number of times they made fun of the Star Wars initiative.
Yep. Yeah.
Reagan's satellite initiative.
Yep. Yeah, all that stuff is just on full display there. Even that the guy's what's his name? Dick Jones. The guy that is I have this big automated machine that the police will use, and it's just basically two legs with guns.
Yes.
Yeah. And we're gonna this will replace policing and the military and whatever else, and it breaks and kills a guy, and was it's
a glitch.
Yeah, it's a glitch, but it was also I have the parts to fix these for 25 years. That's how we were going to keep the business going. Mm-hmm. And I was like, yeah, well, and that all just what's happening was fascinating.
Very much so. Yeah.
Yeah. What did you think of RoboCop, Frank?
So this was my first time seeing RoboCop.
Oh, interesting.
This is my first time. It was one of those things that I had never gotten around to. So, I was really enjoying the commentary side of it. I was really appreciating that with wow, it wasn't subtle, but it was well executed. A lot of it.
I don't think there's nothing about RoboCop that is subtle.
Nothing.
Truly
no,
nothing.
But it was really, it felt very comic booky, and I was surprised to realize that this was the origin. This is the origin of the franchise. I thought it started as as a comic, kind of like Judge Dredd.
Mm-hmm.
But I think maybe that was just from before I had seen Judge Dredd. Maybe I was getting confused. I don't know. But yeah, so I was like, okay, so it feels like it feels like an 80s comic book movie, but it is just an 80s movie. No comic books in sight. I loved like the commercial parodies were so interesting, and the way they were interweaved, and the news segments, the way those were interweaved.
I forgot about the commercials because I watched this a couple weeks ago. It's been a while, so some of it's a little fuzzy in my brain, but there was one commercial that was such a good parody, and now I can't remember what it is. It was kind of later. It was like the last commercial they did.
Well,
I think.
I remember there were two that stood out to me. One was a commercial for an artificial heart transplant, and it was very much like commercials for like big pharma are today. It was very, very, very much like predicting what today's commercials would look like. And then there was another one that was for like a board game called Nukem.
That's it. That's
and
the
it was
one
the whole family playing, and the house explodes. Like that was very like pointed commentary.
It was. It also reminded you of almost. For me, it reminded me of almost every board game commercial in the 90s. Like, like advertising agencies saw it and was like, "Oh, well, let's do that."
That's it.
Unironically, let's do this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let's do that, but for perfection. Yeah.
Kablooey. Then your house blew up. Wild.
So close. But, you mentioned ED-209, the robot dog thing. The second that thing walked out, and it was like stop motion animation, right?
Yeah.
The second it walked out, I was like, did Phil Tippett work on this?
He did, didn't he?
He did. That
yes.
was him. Yes.
That's awesome.
I was immediately like, that is giving me shades of the chess scene from Star Wars or, the Rancor. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Absolutely.
And it was Phil Tippett in his shop animated that.
It made me feel
all the
good,
stop motion.
Truthfully. Like, even though like I look at, I'm like, I know that stop motion, the way that it's shot, the way they're interacting with it, whatever, the way that like when they're in when the board members or Robocop even are in the same shot as it like doesn't move, like, or nothing. But I didn't care because even though it's stop motion in the way that it moves, it still felt authentic to me in its own little way. Like, I don't know, just like part of I wouldn't call Robocop charming, but because it was made in 87, it had that kind of charm. And like, I was born in 87. I do not remember the 80s.
Of course, yeah.
Right? So, like, it's not like I was like, yes, the way life is. I remember.
It reminds me of a simpler time.
This dystopian future satire, the way I remember it.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I did. I really liked. There were a couple of moments jokes and winks and nods that I thought were very funny. Like Murphy's kid loves to watch a show called TJ Laser, which is definitely a spoof of TJ Hooker.
Absolutely. Yep.
I loved that. I also loved like when the ED-209 kills an executive in the boardroom. And the first reaction of like the CEO or whatever is to be like, this is going to cost us $50 million in interest payments alone. It's like, so like Joe Exotic, like, I'm never going to financially recover from this. Yeah. Like first reaction is like, oh no, the money, not like, oh no, this man's family.
Man just the man is dead. Not even like, what do we do? Like, so it's like, they knew what to do. Like that would almost like happened before because he like knew how much it would cost them. Like, in interest payments, like, oh my gosh.
Right.
Yeah. What about RoboCop's look itself? I think he looks great. Like,
it's a very cool look. It's such a cool like 80s action figure come to life.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah.
Even like the mechanics of the way that Peter Weller decided to move, the whirring of the gears as the effect, his leg that opens as like a hip holster to store the gun, like cool when I was a kid. It's cool now. I think all of that still works. Like I've seen the new updated RoboCop. Like the one that came out with Michael Keaton, I don't know, 20 something or other. And they had him in a suit that looked like this, like the initial prototype in the movie. and then it got destroyed pretty quickly, and then they like moved him to this like the black ensemble that he has on, and it just is not as cool. Like there is something like there's something that works about it because you can tell it's cumbersome, like it's an imperfect product. It's like Frankenstein's monster that way, because this basically is also Frankenstein as it's Frankenstein through capitalism instead of through science. Like that's kind of what they're going for.
Oh, that's such a good. It's capitalist Frankenstein. Yes,
right. Like we can do this. We're not going to stop to think if we should or could, you know, like, and there's that part of Frankenstein, but it's just for the buck. Instead of Frankenstein was like, I'm just going to do it to see if I can.
Yes.
There's some subtle subtext in Frankenstein about it being about like his mom died when he was a kid. So it's about him like trying to conquer death because she died and like all that kind of thing. But that's not really that's not in Robocop. This is just, we're here to make a money, and this guy is going to give us the money. Like,
yes, this is about military contracts. We're going to get this military. We're going to get this contract, and then we're going to be selling them spare parts and stuff for the next 25 years, and that's how we stay in business. Yeah, no, you're so right. It is capitalist Frankenstein. That is such a good, like summary of it, description of it.
Yeah, well, what I think is to go further down that rabbit hole. I think. How do I say this? The Frankenstein's monster, it like doesn't have a previous identity. He does not know who he is or what he's about, and he has to form a new one. And it's all based on the experiences that come his way and how he's mistreated and misaligned and so on and so forth. So he becomes a mirror of Frankenstein in the worst form. They're both awful. Like one through physicality and one through mentality. And so, but Robocop retains his identity. Like that's part of it is the rediscovery of his self. And so I like that. I like that it's in some ways the core message is that you can destroy a person so totally. And at the end of the day, a good person can still just be a good person. Even that's all that's left of that person is their head. You know? Like, I think that's, I liked that very much, you know, like it's not a, because I mean, like, they don't like say like, they're not like all cops are great in this movie, right? There's like dirty cops and all this stuff, and they're talking about replacing them. But there's this one guy who like, has been through the worst ordeal that anybody can go through physically, mentally, spiritually, whatever, in terms of this movie, and still comes out the other side going, this is the right thing to do, you know? And so in some ways because he's programmed that, like, he can't, like, you know, hurt the people that made him, but he's savvy enough to figure out a way to, like, deliver the movie's version of justice.
Yes.
You know, 80s justice, you know, like, and I did like that in terms of the whole satire, right? Yeah, I thought that was clever. Say things.
They did a really good job of, like, there were a couple of flashbacks where he was remembering his life before, right? Sort of when he's dying on the stretcher, like he's seeing his life flash before his eyes, and it's his wife and his kid and all these memories and things, and like showing his life flash before his eyes was done very, very effectively. They didn't need to give you a lot but they did communicate a lot with a few flashes of images. And then the same with, like, once he's becoming Robocop, like after he's died and they're bringing him back to life, you see him like power on and power off a bunch of times, you know, over the course of presumably like weeks or months. And they tell that story of like how they made him into Robocop from his point of view, from his like being booted up and turned off point of view. Really visually compelling way to tell that story and like give you the tools you need to piece together what's happening, right? It like trusts you to be smart enough to piece this together and does it in a very sort of a creative way. Like this is a robot, a robo person. Like, how can we do it through that perspective? You know, seeing him come online for the first time and all the graphics, you know, his vision getting clear, all that kind of stuff. leading up to him being unveiled and marched out in front of everybody. And the fact that because it's in his point of view, you don't see him until his first, time out there fighting crime. So like there is a little bit of like the Jaws effect of like what am I not seeing, right? And the suspense starts to build of what he's turned into.
There's a well, you said two things. One, like the clarity of his vision, which I was laughing because it's like the clarity of 1987 camera vision. Yes. So I'm like, how is he going to see anything?
Right.
How, like this is so flawed. Oh no!
Wow. 480 lines of resolution. Amazing.
Oh wow! Oh, yeah, he's lucky he made it through his first day on the job with that kind of vision. But you said like the movie trusts its audience to be smart enough to piece it together, because it really could have towed this line of over-explaining everything, but because it's a rated R movie, it knows that the audience is older, and so it should get it. Like you can't. That's why I think the other Robocop, the new one that came out, the reboot, just doesn't work as well because it's made for a younger audience. It's like action movie, but like they miss the point of the entirety of the first one, which is just social commentary through action movie, and you just don't really get that kind of thing anymore. Not for an R-rated audience, especially one that went on to spawn 4 sequels or 3 sequels. Cartoons, toys, video games, like it's pretty
eventually
wild.
comics.
I think that's pretty wild.
It is, yeah. It is. You don't see a lot of that nowadays. I feel like you see more of that in streaming TV than you do on the big screen. Like where they have time to tell a high production value kind of story. But spread out over more episodes, right? Yep. You get that there, but you don't get it in the movies like we used to.
I think the choices on TV were T.J. Hooker, right? You had something like that, and then the movies, and so now there's so many different options that the movies are just trying to play it safe to get people in the seats because it's so expensive to mount those types of productions. That like everything is just a check by box number to play the safest number. And those are generally the movies that just don't do as well because they just become a paint by numbers, which like eventually you need to move on to a different or more sophisticated art form.
I agree. And you've just touched on something. You've just made me realize that I think TV and film have traded places.
Oh, for sure.
In how they operate, in that TV used to try to keep the budget down, so they were cranking out these stories, and they were maybe not the super in depth, but you got a lot of episodes that were sort of shallow in depth, and now and movies were like, this is where you can do real storytelling and really do visually adventurous things, interesting things, and you have more budget. But now it's sort of the opposite, where like the movies try to be broad to get people in seats, like you're saying, and TV is like, no, that's where you invest your 8 hours into a story because you're going to watch the 8 episodes of this prestige drama or whatever.
Yep.
That's become the more serious medium, and TV and movies have kind of become a little bit more surface level. It's like, well, you only got 3 hours to tell a story because every movie's 3 hours now. So I don't know, how much can we really fit in there?
Right, and even some of the prestige directors, like Scorsese's last couple of movies were all streaming. Like he's like one of the guys. Yeah. And he's like, even then, like, I'll tell a movie, I'll do it in 3 hours, but I'm gonna do it on the small screen. Because
I don't think he's crazy about that, though. I think that's just the reality of the industry,
right?
And COVID at the time.
Because he's not painting by numbers; he's still doing his thing.
Yeah,
but he sees the paint by numbers that's happening over here, and so he knows his even though he doesn't like it, his bigger audience is at home. Yeah.
The audience that's receptive to the kind of story he wants to tell is at home,
right?
Even though that's not where he'd prefer to tell that story, but it's where the audience is,
right? And at the end of the day, it's still about like which company, I think, because they're artists, so like which company is going to let them make their art the way they want to make it instead of being dictated to. And you can't really blame them for wanting to go in that direction either. They
no, not at all.
Dug their own situation there. Two things I wanted to ask you about, see if you noticed. One, that scene in which RoboCop throws his arms through the wall and pulls the guy back and then shoots the guy because they're holding a hostage. That's just The Dark Knight Returns.
Yeah, totally. Yes.
Somebody read that and was using it.
This was very Dark Knight Returns all the way, like from the commentary on through, right?
Yep.
It was very much like Frank Miller was in the same brain space that
absolutely
that they were.
They were all,
and I guess he
all
wrote
Reagan. All Reagan.
Yes, and he co-wrote the sequel, I guess.
Frank Miller did. Yes, I did know that. I had forgotten that until you said that, but I did know that. So that means we're going to do the sequel, right? Because Frank Miller is that.
I guess we have to.
I guess so.
Here's a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
So we included this in Superhero Slapback.
Yes.
And it's not a traditional superhero movie necessarily in the sense that it's not a comic book superhero movie, but it is still kind of a superhero movie, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah, I mean,
even if it's like an anti-hero still.
Yeah, I think he works for the establishment, right? But the establishment in this is corporations to which he breaks free from to then work for the police. So he's not like a vigilante, which is typical of superheroes.
That's right,
but that's not necessarily the main criteria, because you can have superheroes who work for government agencies. Like the Avengers technically work for the government for a good chunk of time. You would still consider them superheroes.
Yep.
So, yeah, I would say that it does fit the superhero criteria, which is basically just like a guy that steps out and above, or a person that steps out and above the realm of normalcy with some kind of super ability, whether that be man-made or self-driven or sun-powered or whatever, for the common good or for the betterment of the society in which they find themselves. So, I'd say, this counts.
I would agree with that. I would agree with that. It's cyborg, but police. I would
say that because, so it's interesting. So, if he was just a dude, if he was the $6 million man, where they're he looks like a regular dude, but he's special inside, I would say that it may be it would actually tip in a different direction, but because he actually does look like he's wearing a costume, his identity is concealed except for his mouth and whatever else, and that's because he's not supposed to know who he is and nobody else is supposed to know who he is, but that's all part of the superhero thing. So I would say superhero.
I would agree. It is so hilariously bloody and schlocky to the point of clearly to the point of being ridiculous. They didn't think those were good special effects. The Phil Tippett aspect of things. Phil Tippett was inspired by Ray Harryhausen, right? He was doing an elevated version of what Ray Harryhausen did. Where I feel like what Paul Verhoeven did here was basically make a Harryhausen style movie.
Wow, that's really insightful. Yeah.
And he got the guy who does Harryhausen style animation better than anybody, better than Harryhausen, to come in and do it. So instead of that stop motion dinosaur in that one scene in Jurassic Park is stop motion, that's amazing. I couldn't tell. It looked like the CG in the rest of the movie. No, it's extra stop motion, extra schlocky, and the blood is obviously fake, and when the that 70s show guy is dying at the end, there's literally blood splurting from his neck. It's all over the top ridiculous. It doesn't look real. And I had read that I guess they were shooting for an R rating, but they kept getting an X rating just because of how
bloody
over the top violent and bloody it was, and so they made it worse effects essentially to make it clear that no one would believe this was real blood.
That's fascinating. But
even teenage, a child wouldn't believe this was real.
What I think actually works about it then is that I know this isn't real. And so if you want me to believe that RoboCop is real, you're not gonna get me there, because and so you might as well give me a world in which none of it is real.
That's it. That's it. It's like it's like choosing to do in Batman have it be sort of a stylized Gotham, right? That's like a little too Art Deco and to be real. Because why not?
Right.
Why not? You're gonna go for as realistic as you can, but sure, there's gonna be,
I've said it before, but I think realism takes a lot of the fun out of these types of genre movies because they're not really allowed to be fantastical. They have to be realistically fantastical, which is not the same thing.
I mean, to me, it's sort of like when you're reading a comic of these sometimes the same characters or at least similar characters, they're drawings you're looking at. So you're conscious the entire time that this is not reality because they're drawings. They're not, AI generated photos that look like they could be real. No, they're drawings. And so to have the film be something that is also sort of an impression of reality, a shadow of the real world, but taking some liberties, I think is perfectly fair. Because it's based on something that comes from drawings and is not designed to look like it's real anyway.
Right. Nope. I think that the juxtaposition between that version of escapism, but also commentary just is a little bit stronger because if it's just so real, then it's not commentary, then it's just life. And then that's not as that doesn't work when there's a giant robot man running around stopping crime.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Last thing, the child in me has always wanted to see a project where it's Robocop versus the Terminator versus Judge Dredd.
Yeah.
I just want, and you could throw Alien and Blade Runner in there for while we're at it, right? Because they're all in the same mix and time and era and whatever.
Blade Runner, they came up with the idea for this movie while they were working on Blade Runner.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's fascinating.
Isn't that cool? Yeah, while making that movie, ideas for this one started to percolate, and this is the brainchild of that. So you're absolutely right to bring in Blade Runner and all of those. Yeah. I think the obvious thing that came to my mind was Judge Dredd, but I didn't think about the Terminator. That's great to have because this movie actually spiritually feels like the Terminator.
It does
in a lot of ways.
It feels a lot.
It's in the same tradition.
It feels a lot like the first Terminator.
The first one.
But it's got the actionness with more satiric, but the actionness of the second one.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah,
yes.
So there's but that would be just if in a different type of world where this is the first one that comes out in the cinematic universe of franchises, that's the kind of one I want to see. When Universal was are you ready for the dark universe? I'm ready for the dystopian robot universe. Give me the
totally,
with the helmeted face coverings and the special guns and the that's actually I would actually enjoy, and it'd all be satire, and all of it should be commenting on something because Terminator satire too,
totally.
Or the second one is so in its own way, maybe not overly deliberate satire. It's more just commentary than satire. This is clear satire.
This is satire. Yes, agreed.
But anyway, Frank, we actually had longevity on this topic that I didn't expect to be truthfully. So you tell the people where they can find us, and I'm going to look up what our next movie is.
Ooh, yes. Okay, you do that. Yeah, the next Superhero Slapback movie. Well, yeah, you can find us at beerwithgeeks.com. You can find us wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can, of course, subscribe. You can support us at patreon.com/thoughtbubbleaudio. If you subscribe, leave us a rating or review anywhere you get your podcasts. Please do it right now. Now, you have 20 seconds to comply. You have 15 seconds to comply. No? All right.
You have 15 seconds to comply. Anyway, did you finish your thing? I wasn't really listening to you.
I finished my thing. Yes.
Great. Okay.
So what is up next for Superhero Slapback?
Okay, so we have options available to us, Frank. So so if we wanted to move on from 1987, we only have one movie left that we definitely have to do, but we could potentially have two. We could talk about maybe three. Are we doing TV movies? Because that actually changes things if we are.
I'm going to say no.
Okay,
we haven't so far, and I feel like
sure,
that might be
a
slippery slope.
It could be a slippery slope because I'll tell you why. So we have Superman 4, which is the non-negotiable one we have to do next.
We have to do that.
Yeah. There's also Masters of the Universe, which technically does kind of fit into the criteria that we are establishing for ourselves. He-Man is the alter ego of Prince Adam, so he's super powered to save his people, and so on and so forth. I've never seen Masters of the Universe movie. The only He-Man that is the Kevin Smith Revelations one on Netflix. Yeah, so that's the only one that I'm like attached to. So I'm fine skipping it, but he technically does fit the superhero criteria that we now have laid out in Robocop.
And that was a theatrical film?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, what's his name that plays Perry White in Superman Returns is Skeletor.
Frank Langella.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay.
Like I said, I'm good to skip it. And so to keep
how about this?
Mm-hmm.
We know we're doing Superman 4, so let's proceed with that for sure.
Okay.
But why? I would love some listener feedback on this.
Like whether we should do Masters
or
not?
Does Masters of the Universe count as a superhero film? Because that has implications for, if that counts, like if Robocop and that both count, then like lots of other things are going to start to count that maybe are more edge cases.
True. I mean, there are things that say, well, I'm using Flights, Tights, and MovieNights.com as my like go-to list because everything's separated by year here. And there is stuff that we missed, like technically, like we missed the Toxic Avenger, which would then also count. The Spirit TV movie that came out in 1987. And I ask about TV movies because 1998's The Incredible Hulk Returns, starring Dolph Lundgren and Daredevil. That one's Thor. It might be Thor. And then the other one is Daredevil. And so I'm fine skipping the TV ones because they there's TV. The only one that I might put up a stink for that I think we should watch is David Hasselhoff's Nick Fury. Maybe for the sheer enjoyment of watching David Hasselhoff as Nick Fury. But I'm also fine not watching that too.
My gut is to lean away from those, but maybe make some exceptions for a couple that we want to do. But the rule isn't okay. Now we must do all of them. Like it's generally no, but like with a couple of exceptions.
Okay, so then let's say our non-negotiable next one is Superman 4. We'll see what listeners say about Masters of the Universe. After that, we're dealing in the Return of Swamp Thing, The Punisher, if we so choose. That was direct to video, so we can ignore that one. I do believe it was direct to video, but then we would also have to talk about the Captain America direct-to-video one as well, which I think we should watch.
I kind of want to watch that one.
Yeah, I've never seen the Dolph Lundgren Punisher.
Okay, same.
Yeah, so like,
I'm interested in that too.
Yeah, I could go for it, and Batman because it's 1989.
Well, obviously.
So and that will wrap up the 80s.
Yeah.
So and then the 1990 Captain America movie.
Yeah.
If we want to go satire and superhero, we could go Darkman, which is Sam Raimi and Liam Neeson.
Yeah, I've never seen that.
I haven't seen it since I was a kid. And then there's Robocop 2 in there. Dick Tracy, if we're counting Dick Tracy. He's not a superhero. See, that's where I'm like,
I don't think he's
a comic. He's comic, but he's not which would also be
a superhero.
Yeah.
I don't think Dick Tracy counts. He's a detective. But
then we'll take Dick Tracy right out of there.
Yeah, I think he's close, but no.
Okay, that's fine. And then Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles to wrap up the 90s.
I'm about to guess.
Yeah, so that's that's where we are in 1990, and I won't go past that because I'm just going to keep naming movies forever if I do that.
Okay.
So
I'm good with most of those.
Lenny Luthor coming our way.
Oh God, if I ever talk about this, I've talked about this movie so many times on podcasts. I'm ready to. Maybe this will be my definitive statement on Superman 4. Maybe that's a weekend. All right. Well, email us beerwithgeeks@gmail.com and put Masters of the Universe in the subject line to let us know if you think it counts as a superhero movie or not. We want to hear from you. Cool. That's all I got.
Yep, me too. So until next time, cheers.
Cheers.